on this computer. Thank you all so very much for joining me. I am Sam Hayes with One Stop Transaction Services. I'm a CA forms trainer, all around car forms nerd, realtor, CTC, all that blah, blah, blah. And basically, I'm going to share with you what I can see from a TC perspective, verify all with the broker of record of the age of the file you are working on. Before we get started into the presentation, I want to go over a couple of little tidbits I heard over the past couple of days that might be something to be aware of. Make sure some things that I've seen that are problems. This doesn't really have to do with the RLA as much, but be aware of it and we'll tap into it. Solar is a nightmare right now. Please make sure if you are getting a listing that you are finding out, is it liened? Is it owned? Do we have contracts? Is there a transfer fee? I had issues on 3 files. All of them had the exact same on 3 files about the water softener and the alarm. Do they transfer? Are they paid through? How do we get the contracts? All of that type of thing. There's more about the listings than I think people are realizing. We're so focused on the commission right now, we're missing the other bits. So I wanted to kind of throw those out there just to get everybody, and we got a couple of stragglers, so we'll get started now. Okay, so bit about me. I've done this for a while. I love it. I love talking about this stuff. My goal is to help everyone as much as possible. Going back to how did we get here? Well, this really started in 2019. This is not new, even though it feels like it's rushing and brand new. We started with all sorts of different litigation. The Sister Burnett class action hit. The decision was done within like a week, and they decided at $1.8 billion. Okay, well, a class action suit, you get triple the amount. And if you're going to file an appeal, you have to put up a bond for that amount. That's $5.4 billion. So when everybody's like, why didn't we appeal? Nobody had the money to do it. Bottom line, that's the reality. It would have bankrupted multiple of the brokerages, NAR and everybody else. So they went into the settlements. Please remember, even though August 17th is a very important date with the changes with the MLSs, the settlement is not finalized. That is scheduled for November 26th. That date can change. With a couple of weeks ago, it was decided in court that DOJ can reopen their cases against NAR. Some of the other settlements are being revisited after what's happened with the MLS PIN, REMAX, and some of the others. So be ready to pivot. This is the information we have now as of this moment. However, we can have changes. We can have updates. So we're going to go with the best info available at the time and keep going. There are still open court cases. That's the other thing to remember. The buyer side with everything is still open. We still have buyer side open lawsuits, including Moeller, Batten 1, Batten 2, individual ones in the states, individual brokerages. The whole reason we're all agreeing to play ball with the NAR settlement is that we are supposed to stay underneath the umbrella of the NAR settlement so that the individual brokers and individual agents, because that has happened too, would have protections from any of the copycat frivolous lawsuits. What do we need to know since all of this has been going on for years and years and years, and it just seems like it's speeding up? Well, biggest thing is cooperating compensation is gone. I heard a rumor that SDMLS pulled it today. I'm expecting it tomorrow. CRMLS, I believe, is pulling it in the next week. The deadline is the 17th. However, many of the MLSs are moving up and removing them sooner. Expect to see stuff going probably within this week, next week of August. If you do not already have, please make sure, totally separate, but buyer broker agreement. Do not put a butt in a seat to drive them around to show them a property without that representation. I understand it's not required till the 17th. However, I am expecting to see more DRE audits, and we're going to want to show standard of care and due diligence that as soon as they were available, we were participating and doing proper file documentation. Multiple lawsuits are in process. Stop talking about this on social media. Like, don't talk. I mean, you can talk about it, but like, do not get into detail. Do not say, I offer this commission and you offer that. I'm going to do everything possible to watch what I'm saying because we're all at different brokerages and different things. That's the antitrust thing. And guess what? DOJ is lurking in all of those group chats and they're screenshotting it and they're using it to build a case. So I understand this is a huge change and I understand that this is a big deal. Please remember, anything you put on the internet lives forever, good, bad, and indifferent. Be smart, be savvy, watch what you're saying, cite your third-party sources when possible. It's a really big deal. This written agreement thing is not just going to be for realtors. Right now, I understand it's part of NAR. It's, oh goodness, it's AB some 2890, I think. I have to look it up. This is a bill currently in the Senate and everything here in state of California. So this is going to be in law by January 1. There is no opposition to it. There will be requirements. That's also for commercial. That's for anybody, even if you're not an NAR member. So now's the time to get used to it. We're going to have 3 contracts moving forward in a transaction. We have a listing agreement, seller to the seller's agent. We're going to have a buyer broker, buyer to the buyer's broker as an agent, and then we're going to have a purchase agreement. So there will always be 3 contracts, and you're going to need copies of different parts of those in your file to stay compliant and show you did your due diligence. Let's see, verify everything with your broker of record and your legal team. I'm about to tell you, currently right now, the MLS is switching to being only for marketing. It's really not going to be where we're verifying anything for compensation moving forward. It's also going to be a situation where I know there are different MLSs are doing different things about concessions being slid in here, or we'll go into talking about how a seller can direct you to share about potential concessions. Be careful. I don't think this is going to stick. I think it's a loophole that's existing right now. And I think in all honesty, verify everything with your broker of record. But my understanding is all the big names, those brokerages are directing no compensation to be listed or concession whatsoever in the MLS, that they really want to make sure that it's something the buyer comes and asks for, because that's how the DOJ NAR that's the settlement, how it's supposed to go, is that we have no input on what amounts are negotiated, that's the whole skill set of the agents coming together, representing their clients, the buyer and seller, and figuring out a win-win situation for all. Verbal means nothing. I have pounded the drum on this for many, many, many years. I know I worked with clients for many, many years. Oh, I talked to my client. Okay, but it's in writing. Oh no, it's fine. I talked to my client. Okay, no. At the end of the day, if you're out and about and don't have an opportunity, email is always better than text. Quick email recapping the conversation you had. Hey, it's great talking to you today, Miss Buyer 1, Buyer 2, Seller 1, Seller 2. This is what we talked about. This is the property we saw. These were your concerns. This is what you said you were going to do. This is what I said I'm going to do. Let me know if there's anything I should remember differently or that were clarified. Having that in your file is going to protect you. This is not a time to be lackadaisical with paperwork. I know there's many TCs on this call. They're all amazing. You want to work with one of us. Personalities, find the right match. This is not a time for an agent to go without administrative support, and you need an expert in knowing the little bits and pieces, because there are people out there looking to trip us up. And I know that's a negative take on things, but the reality is it's been seen to generate income for individuals, as we saw with the lawsuits and the amounts of money that people are ending up with. People are seeing opportunity. So be smart, get support, make sure you have proper documentation to be able to follow up and show the communication was held, because transparency is the biggest part of this whole lawsuit, the whole thing. They want to be able to make sure it was transparent. Well, how can we prove that? Have something in writing. Circle back, make sure you're covering yourself. So we're going to start off with the broker compensation advisory. What this is it's also in your BRBC, it's in your RPA, it's in your RLA now. You're going to have this every single time you're putting together one of these contracts that we've discussed. We are letting them know, as it has always been, everything is negotiable. There is now, on the listing side, the opportunity for additional compensation if a buyer is unrepresented. This is not going to create agency, allegedly. I have concerns about this. I will be very transparent talking about this, because if something went sideways and we have a non-real estate based lawyer that ends up getting involved, seeing that you were financially compensated for representing a party, you are the individual who is the most educated, but you still told him, I'm not really representing you. I think we got a gray area here. So verify with your broker of record. It may be a better course to go dual agency. Double check. I want to make sure everybody gets taken care of, and I see why they are doing this. However, the additional compensation portion is where the gray area, I'm afraid that's going to create some flags. Also, let them know you can do dual agency, where I had a buyer, I also had the seller, I brought you guys together, or the brokerage, because remember, dual agency is under the broker, that both sides can be represented. The buyer representation compensation is fully negotiable. That is totally, everything is negotiable. It is all, nothing is set in stone, nothing is industry standard, everything is fully negotiable. Written agreements are required. Well, Sam, I'm on the listing side. Why do I care? I don't need to see that. How are you going to prove to your seller that that's the amount that was agreed to so that you can back it up to the SPBB? You need to get that last page of the buyer broker. You need to have something that you did your due diligence as well. Well, Sam, I'm not a part of the listing side. I don't need that. Well, you've got it. You've got it in the MLS. You've got the contract. It's a little bit different. But when we're negotiating where your client, the seller, is now going to be offering concession to the buyer based on an agreement the buyer has with their broker, don't we want proof that that agreement exists? So extra documentation is going to be happening. That's why you really want to work with somebody who understands all these moving parts and extra pieces and make sure we've all got updated checklists. Going on to the second page, there's advantages to written agreements. Well, yeah, we can all remember what we agreed to because it's in writing. It's not my opinion, your opinion. It's just written down. Buyers are responsible for payment to the buyer broker. That's why they have a buyer broker agreement. There's a couple of ways to do this. Buyer pays because that's what they've agreed to in that buyer broker agreement. Cool. Seller, then buyer can negotiate and ask that, hey, seller, I really want to buy your house, but I need some help here. So then we're going into the SPBB, the seller pay buyer broker. That's when you're going to need that documentation. You're going to need that proof because we're now having your client do a concession that's going to be used as a commission payment. We need to prove that. Well, what if the buyer broker just goes straight to the seller? What if we got a FSBO? What do we do? Okay, well, you can do single party comp and then you do a seller non-agency is what they're recommending. These are all different pieces that you're going to do for negotiation skills. And these are all things that I highly recommend. I know it's not fun, but a lot of the role playing and doing practice scripts are really going to be helpful. Going back to some old school practices of good basic business and feeling very confident in this. You're already ahead of it by coming to one of my classes or anybody else's classes. Everything you're reading, you're going to be ahead of everyone else. Unfortunately, on many of the different chats that I'm on, nobody knows what's going on. There are a lot of people that are very nervous and have not chosen to educate themselves. So taking the time to do this, go through and really practice and get comfortable, read these forms over and over again so you can comfortably explain them, is going to make a difference for you in the industry. Let's see, concerns about implied agency, dual agency, that's that whole issue. And then also, this is the changing practice. We're changing as an industry. It's not just you, it's not just your broker, it's not just California. The whole industry is changing. And that's going to be an issue because a lot of people, well, when I bought my house, well, when I did, it's a whole new world. And I'm about to start singing, so I'll walk away from that. But still, it's the whole thing of a big change, and it is what it is. So we want to explain that this is way it doesn't matter which agent you work with. This is how we're going to be moving forward. Any questions? Okay, then we'll move on to the listing agreement. A lot of this really hasn't changed. In all honesty, it's pretty similar to what we've all been doing before. I do like that they've moved to the grid. I think the grid is a really great solution. And then you can reference back to the paragraphs for the details. I think it helps not hiding, different time frames and zones and things in there. You're going to start off with the date it was prepared. Who can sell this? Who are the people? What's the representation period? Now, remember, it has been reduced to 24 months maximum. You can extend it after that. However, if you have an entity seller, be it an LLC, trust, that type of thing, they can do a little bit longer. You're going to want to check with your broker of record what their comfort zone is. I know we're going to have longer days on market. We already are showing that. And I remember when listings used to be for a year or more. Go ahead and just be ready to explain and work with your clients. You can always adjust that. That's why we have the modifications of terms. That's why we work together, keeping that clear line of communication, transparency with the seller to make sure that they're aware. Do updates of CMAs if you've been sitting too long. You know how to do this. It's just keeping in communication, touching base every week. What's the listing price? Okay, well, I know my best practice, I was always trained One, we don't set the listing price, the seller sets the listing price. Two, doesn't hurt to find out what does the market say? What's the market saying right now? Let's run a CMA. Let's run a net sheet. Let's find out. Hey, let them know the difference in a little bit of numbers may impact them. It may sound scary when it's this number, but when I run you a net sheet, it's not that big a difference. That may be helpful when you need to get into negotiations with the property. What type of listing is it? Do we have a manufactured home? Is it 55 and up? Are they going to have to make sure that they meet the age thing? I just had a transaction where an older daughter is living with the family and they had to get a variance, and we almost missed the close of escrow and had the seller's side cancel on us. Find out these things when you're talking to them. Are there different people who don't meet these age criteria? Is that what they're looking for? What's going on? Do we know if they've got the recorded from the HCD? Is it officially on foundation? Has that been recorded? Do we have that document to access? Because any lender is going to be looking for that. That's why you want to go ahead and start working with your title company, pull your property profile, get a prelim going. These are all the things you want to be doing when you're starting with your listing. Do we have a probate listing? Do you have your letter of authorization? Do we know if they're even the person who's allowed to sign for the estate? Do we know if it's limited? Does it have to have court approval? Remember, that's only a 90-day listing. You've got a sweet window of time there. So you want to maybe judge and adjust for when you're going live on the market and when you take the listing, making sure you're staying within timeframes. This is where you're going to need to be, again, talking to your client, to if they have legal representation because of the situation. Ask open-ended questions, listen, make sure you're hearing everything so that the more we can prep in the front during the listing period, the smoother your transaction is going to go. That's just a proven fact. Any questions? Okay. Compensation, the exciting part. How do we get paid for all this great work we're about to be doing? What's going on? Let's see. James, is it not changing? Let me know if it changed now. Okay, that should be changed. Let me know if you guys can everybody, is everybody seeing completing RLA compensation now? Okay, well, that's fun. Let's switch screens here. Let's see what Canva is doing to me. Okay.
I see your screen now.
Okay. You know, it's not a Zoom unless something technically goes wrong. It just isn't. So with this, okay, everybody, we're on the compensation, completing the RLA. Thanks for letting me know. Sorry, I've had this happen before with my Zoom and my Canva. I think they just want to make me look special. I'm not sure. So with that, compensation. This is, again, we're reiterating, this is not fixed by law. There is no standard in the industry. This is negotiated by a transaction by transaction case. We're going to start with compensation to the seller's broker. This can be a percentage, and then maybe you have an administrative fee. Maybe you have an in-house TC fee. Maybe you have agreed that you will cover a certain amount for staging or something along those lines. If some fixing up, help them with some repairs of the property. That's where you can do that. Then we're getting into, again, that conversation about the unrepresented compensation. So why did that didn't copy over? So what we want to do with that is, again, verify with your broker of record, talk to your client, find out, it may be better to go dual, it may not, find out how you want to proceed on that. I do have concerns about this because, again, you're going to have to make sure you have a buyer non-agency. First thing would be anything that buyer would sign, and then you would be presenting the documents, but you'd have to be able to also convey that nothing would be confidential if they communicated with you, because you wouldn't be actually representing them. There's a lot on this, so double check. Of course, my copy and paste at the bottom didn't copy over, so that's not fun. Let's see. Continuation period. Let's provide the list of the buyer's names. Who came through the property? Make sure you've got that. What's the length of that? Again, that's negotiable. Did they work with any other brokers? Did they have a previous listing with another brokerage that they also have a continuation period? That's something you're going to want to take a look at and find out. Make sure you've got documentation for that. Make sure you've got copies of that on file. Any questions? Cool. Okay. Hopefully we moved on. Everybody is now seeing the RLA compensation. So this is breaking down the paragraphs that support that portion of the grid we just went through. There's an advisory. Everything is negotiable. Seller to pay compensation, breaking down how that would be handled. Optional additional compensation for the unrepresented buyer. As we talked again, verify with your broker of record. You're going to need your BNA. There's the concerns about that. Find out how they want to proceed. If when the transaction is completed or if the seller defaults, I know we all have stories of sellers that sometimes make some choices and go a little rogue. And so you are still entitled to compensation. And this is explaining all the details of that. Continued right to compensation. Again, that's that time frame we discussed where you would need to provide a list. You would have a set time frame of those individuals if they were to come back and write an offer on the property. Any additional compensation terms, going into any details, any changes. The maximum amount of time for the listing period. Again, that's 24 months for an individual. If you're an entity that's a little bit, you can change that and do it, adjust accordingly. Any questions on this part? Okay. Now we're on to the MLS and the public marketing. I know this comes up sometimes where there are questions regarding what about the photos still being on the MLS? What about, I want them taken down after close of escrow? That is not going to happen. We have it disclosed here. The SPB, or excuse me, statewide buyer and seller advisory, the SBSA. I believe it's also in the BRBC. These photos, we can't, once they're on the internet, they're out there in the ether, like we were talking about. So you want to be careful about which photos, if you've got somebody who has concerns, make sure you're discussing this with them ahead of time. This is saying that we're going to mark it on the MLS or we're not, or the only photos that can be taken are per the MLS rules. That's it. What if you or family member are doing photography? You want to use the PIA. That's the property images agreement that states who owns the photos after close of escrow, that states compensation, anything along those lines. Anybody you hire should technically have their own contract. In case they don't, this is available. Do you like to use photos afterwards? You know, I bought the key, have the keys, or, you know, I agreed to the house, or we've closed, or all that fun stuff. Make sure you're using an SVR. That's a photo and video agreement and release. That includes letting anybody to take photos of the property. That's taking photos of the individuals, their family members. I would highly suggest if you're doing the families and there are children under the age of 18, you might want to do the back of their heads. Just be aware of things. Unfortunately, we live in a world that's not always kind. So be savvy about that. Review those documents and double check with your broker of record what they require and request. So if the property is going to be marketed on the MLS, we are also going to include automatically the MLSA. This is the multiple listing service addendum. And of course, mine got a little bumped up there, but it goes through and explains what is an MLS? What is this thing? We use MLS like it's no big deal, but what is that? What is the sharing? What does it involve with the records and documents? What information is provided to the MLS before and after the sale? What tracking? What's going on? What's a broker's MLS versus an MLS being open? And, you know, we got our Zillow versus our CRMLS and the subscriptions and who's got access and all of that fun stuff. What are the benefits of using the MLS? Exposure, the impact of what happens if they opt out, the reduction of exposure. What if you don't list in the local MLS? Public marketing. Are you part of an MLS with clear cooperation? Public marketing within clear cooperation. What are the benefits and detriments of using coming soon status to impact marketing or in days on market? Good and bad. Do we begin to list then? Do you want me to list you now? Do you want me to list as of a certain date? Let me go on page 2 here. Or are we not going to list at all? And letting them know, hey, if we start publicly marketing because you changed your mind and things are a little quiet, I got to put it on the MLS within a day. And also, hey, maybe my MLS doesn't have clear cooperation policy. What data is on the internet is the property address. What about the different features you can opt out of? Do you not want to let people give you comments and reviews? Do you not want automated estimate of value? If the seller chooses to elect out, then you would use the SELI form. So that's an additional one. I believe if everything works the way it's supposed to, you mark that box, it should automatically add itself to your listing agreement packet, but always double check. This goes into seller concessions, as we've discussed, explaining what can be seller's concessions. It's not just for compensation. It can also be for carpet. It can be because we know there's an HOA assessment coming up. It can be because they know that there's some deferred maintenance that they're not going to do. Maybe they want a credit for pest clearance because they don't want to deal with it and get everything out before they vacate the property. Who knows? It also talks about the seller's authorizations that we're saying we are defaulting to, we are not putting in the MLS. Like we being agents, brokers, realtors, do not and want to stay as far away as possible from promoting concessions right now for compensation because of what's going on with all of these open litigation situations. Verify everything with the broker of record, but currently a very conservative approach is what is being encouraged. You need to decide what's best for yourself, your client, and again, what your broker says to do. If they decide, no, I really, really want you to put that on there, it's really important to me, I want to make sure they know this, they have to put it in writing to you. And then we have to go ahead and still tell them, I can't say these terms, I can just say that we'll consider it. You can't get into specifics, can't get into numbers, percentages, anything like that. So again, this is something you're going to want to discuss with your broker. Make sure you have clear direction from the broker of record of the file you're working on. How do they want to move this forward and be able to explain why to the seller? The whole point of all of this, again, is negotiation and transparency. We're not saying what a buyer's agent's supposed to make. We're not saying the buyer doesn't get to say what the listing agent's supposed to make. Everybody gets their own negotiations, and then we come together and negotiate for the best stability for our buyer and seller. That's bottom line. Transparency and getting away from anything that looks like, well, they sold it for this, so we should get this. That's industry standard. That's not a term. Don't use that. It's bad. Back to the photographs. Are visitors allowed to take photographs? They're going to take photos. You know, somebody wants to send it. Oh, mom, you should see this backyard. It was amazing. Oh my goodness. I can't wait. I love the view from the primary bedroom. Some sellers don't like that. They don't want that to happen. So again, we need to mark the box that do not want photos taken, and the only photos can be used for preparing the appraisal or the physical inspection. Any questions? Okay. So going back into the RLA, what are the broker and the seller's duties? Who's got to do what? So what are the timing of the presentation of the offer? Do you want me to hold all of them? Are you going to be traveling? Are we going to present them to you as soon as I get them? Do you think we're going to have a ton? Do you not want to deal with this? What's going on? So this is something where you can set that timing and have a discussion so it's in writing what's agreed to. What about love letters? It is in the Fair Housing Discriminatory Advisory that this is not supposed to happen. I would definitely review that 8A with the seller because they're signing this. That document typically is in the front of your listing packet right before they're going to get to this portion. So you're going to want to kind of go back and forth, and you can show them and explain what this means. Definitely we're defaulting that we're not going to present them because we don't want to participate in anything that is discriminatory. However, some sellers do want to see them, and if they do, this is documentation that they have directed the listing broker to present these letters. Make sure you, again, verify with your broker of record, make sure you verify everything, have them initial next to FHDA 8, maybe see what you guys want to do. Just be careful, something to be aware of. Investigation reports. Natural Hazard is saying we are going to order this right away, and we're saying the seller's going to order that. We all know the seller's not ordering the NHD. I see a lot of times in other counties outside of San Diego that escrow is ordering NHD reports, and NHDs are getting negotiated in contracts when there should already be one on file. So moving forward as a buyer's agent, it may be something you're going to be calling them anyway. I'd ask if they have an NHD on file, find out about the fire home hardening, find out if they've had the report done. Do they have to have any clearing out done? Will it be something that's passing on to the buyer? This will let you start some conversations ahead of time so that you can go ahead and be ready to be ahead for negotiating. You know what's coming. You know what's going on. as a TC, as soon as I get a listing, I order the NHD right away. If there's a preferred company, you definitely might want to note that when we get to other terms, find out what the seller wants. Most likely, they usually default to the agent or the brokerage. They're not ordering NHDs every single day. We are. They don't know. So make sure you also present them with the different brochures and contact information to let them decide if they are on the fence, or however you have built with your brokerage, and maybe your brokerage has one that they prefer to work with because of E&O coverage. And you can explain that through transparency and let them know this is the one we work with, but here are some other options. The other thing to do, prelim, get your title involved right away. If you've got an escrow company you work with that you can pre-op, I know they don't like to do it without a number, but sometimes they'll have a file on their desk so that they can get started. Let's get everybody working together as soon as we can, especially with title. I know there's a lot of properties, especially in San Diego and different areas where price point is high, that are in trust. But what kind of trust? And who's allowed to sign for it? Do we have an entity? Are we dealing with any liens? Is there anything that we should know about? If you can get that prelim going and get an SI going to escrow and be ready right at the beginning, that's going to help mitigate a lot of problems on the back end. I know it's not fun and it's extra documentation, but the more that's done early, the easier it is to handle when everybody's still excited and we're not at crunch time trying to get this deal done. We got a moving truck full of furniture and the lender needs this, or we're going to lose the lock. All that pressure stuff we can take off of ourselves by stepping back and really looking at what can we pre-do and prep this file so it is just ready to roll as soon as you're on the MLS. HOA, is there an upfront cost? How fast the turnaround? How expensive is it if we got a 10-day escrow? What do we do about that? What do we do? Like, find out, have a conversation with them. Is there 1, 2, 3, 4, how many HOAs do you have? Do you have a sub HOA? Do you have an HOA for utilities? There's all sorts of things. So having these conversations with your client, finding out as much as you can. We're saying we're going to do this within 5 days of starting the agreement. So let's go ahead and get into that. I do have some clients that choose to do pre-listing inspections. Make sure you get those to your TC. Make sure you're sharing those with your TC and that we can get them into disclosures. Any of those reports, even though you upload them to the MLS to have it as information for any potential buyer, we still need those acknowledged in the transaction. So make sure all these items that we're marking down on RLA 3F3, get copies to your TC. If they need to get paid, get them over to your escrow company. The sooner, again, we do this up front and just get in the habit, then it's going to stay a rhythm through your transaction and you're going to have a smoother transaction as a result. Are there any exceptions to the ownership title? Do you have first right of refusal for any reason? Do you have somebody who maybe they signed, or you had a slight grant deed that never got recorded, but grandma and grandpa said it was fine, so nobody's worried about it? Who knows? Have the conversation, find out what's going on. If there's something unique that you've got to do. Does the seller need to do a contingency to purchase? Do we need to put an SPRP in place? Now, remember, the SPRP typically are the only two contingencies ever on a transaction for the seller on a residential transaction. Without that form, if it's just assumed, we don't have that protection in place if the seller is unable to find that replacement property and wants to stay in this property. I've seen it happen where suddenly we have to sell and a seller was not happy because the cost for them moving and now what they were paying monthly, it was very different and they weren't ready for it. So make sure you're asking and finding out, and let's take our due diligence steps to get it documented. Any questions? Okay. Let's see. Does the seller want to opt out? I don't want a lockbox. You have to come over here every single time. Okay. I don't want any signs. Okay. We won't put any signs. Additional terms. That might be if you have an independent TC and you're having the seller cover the cost. That might be that they've agreed to pay up to $2,000 to you for any staging or marketing amounts. That might be, I will go ahead, if I'm a dual agent, I'll do it for X number versus Y number. Any of that stuff, that's where you can put. Remember, I know it looks small. That's going to automatically generate a TOA, that text overflow addendum. So type as much as you want. The more documentation, the better. Keep it clear and concise, though. This is a legal contract. Anything we add, we are practicing law. Advisories and addenda. We're already going to do the BCA, as we already discussed. Is an REO? Is it a trust? Is it a short sale? Addenda, does your brokerage have anything that they automatically add? Market condition advisory is not a bad one. Statewide, anything along those lines, something to look at. Any questions? This is the fun part. So instead of going through every paragraph, I'm just going to list these out and kind of look at them real quick. And these are the supporting ones. Most of these we've already gone through on the grid. This is just making sure you have a quick shot of where do I find something? Well, I need the paragraph to back it up. Well, where is it in the contract? Here's where it is in the contract. Items excluded and included. Is at least not owned, liened. Smart home features. Are you leaving the ring or are you taking it? What are you representing to me, seller? What are my responsibilities as your broker? How do you want me to present your offers? What about the offer letters? You're acting in good faith, seller. You were telling me you have the authorization. You've been transparent with me. You were telling me we are good to go. There's nothing hiding in the closet to scare me during a listing period that you didn't tell me. Investigations and reports, undisclosed conditions. If you don't tell me that Aunt Mary might have been buried in the backyard, we have a problem. So make sure that you're reviewing that again. And I would kind of press and say, is there anything else you want to tell me about the property? Anything at all? I'd rather have a seller give me too many little ditzy things that may not really apply to a transaction, but it will open up a conversation. And if you're really listening, we might be able to find out something that can help you be a better to negotiate or be aware of a concern of the sellers and be a better service. Deposit. Agency relationship disclosure, the seller representation that yes, they can sell this. I might be able to represent both sides if I'm showing your property. We might have competing sellers and buyers on the same property, depending. You might be competing to buy something that for your up leg, and one of the buyers may be competing. What do we do about an unrepresented buyer? I'm confirming that I have agency with you. What about the termination of our agency relationship? All of these different things are paragraphs within the RLA that it's good to know where to go find them and to be able to provide clarity. I like having a third party source a lot of times can bring everybody down when it's coming from emotional responses. So that's why I broke this out for you. Any questions? Okay. Where to find more stuff? What are we doing about this? Security, insurance, showings, audio, video. If they have one of the, nanny cams or something, we need to post in the window, you are being recorded, because that has been become an issue and has come to lawsuit where buyers were discussing the property inside. Don't do that. Sellers heard and it impacted the negotiation. So make sure everybody's being aware, but also make sure it's being disclosed. Photographs, internet advertising, the key safe. We're defaulting. We're going to put on a key safe, a lockbox. If it's tenant occupied, we got to get the tenants to agree to it. Our sign, equal housing opportunity. What do we do about attorney's fee if we go that way? You do know that your management, your broker has final approval. That's why you sign as broker on these things. But broker has 5 days. That's also why your listing agreement has to be in so fast to your broker. They have to look at this for brokerage oversight, that they double check it, because we all need an extra set of eyes to make sure that everything's in compliance and we're up to date. And does this make sense? They're going to let us know about any successor or assigns. How are we going to handle dispute resolution? You've read the entire agreement. You have ownership, title, and authority, legally authorized signer. So I'm going to get on my soapbox about this one because it makes me crazy. In the RPA, within 3 days of acceptance, the party who is signing on behalf of an entity is to provide to the other party in escrow proof of signing authority. That is not the document that escrow has signed during the transaction. In each one, in a trust, in an LLC, with a probate, there is a specific document that is created to show signing authority. It does not tell me who gets all the money. It does not tell me who gets the cat. It is literally created to say this person is allowed to sign for this entity. That document is very important. I have actually had happen, and I know everybody's like, oh, it never happens. Yes, it does. I had a deal where we had a trust and I kept pushing for it and pushing for it. There was a second trustee that nobody found till the day of closing who only signed one document in escrow. I don't even know. We brought it up. No, escrow poo-pooed me. Everybody poo-pooed me, told me it was handled. It went through. So far, there's not been a problem, but that happens. Or you have somebody saying they're able to sign and we need 3 other signers. And that's what was required by that entity. And those other signers were not aware they were making a purchase with the entity finances. These are why you want to take the extra steps. to protect yourself and get that proper documentation. It is to insulate and document a compliant and defendable file that we took all the steps and did our due diligence, since we're all the experts, because this is what we do. And that's why we're here in this class. So that is definitely, and now knowing that it is in the RLA, it's also in the BRBC. So when you get the purchase agreement and somebody requests it, they know you had to get it for the other two docs. Make sure you have it ready and available. Probably makes sense to send it over with your offer moving forward. Again, compliance, defendable file, being able to show standard of care. Really important things. Any questions? We're almost there. Last one. Okay, so this is the new form that everybody's freaking out about a bit. This is your open house, visitor non-agency disclosure and sign-in. This is a really important document. It's going to protect you at your open houses. We know it's safer always to have a few people with you at the open house, working the open house with you. This is definitely something where you want to make sure that people are coming in that they are signing when they enter the property. If they choose not to sign it, you of course don't want to tell them not to come in, but then you treat it like an unlicensed agent situation where I can hand you a flyer, but I can't answer you any questions. I can point to things on the flyer, but that's it. I cannot communicate with you about the property. This is letting everybody know the agent doesn't represent the visitor. This is, again, we are saying there's no written agreement. I am not working with you. If you talk to me, I am working for the seller. I'm going to share this information with the seller. Anything you tell me, it's not confidential. We're now besties. I am working for the seller. If a visitor wants to write the offer through me, that's fine. I will disclose if you're going to be buyer non-agent represented, as we saw in the other forms that are allowed, or are we going to establish an agency and we're going to sign the SP or PSRA or the BRBC? You got to do that before I can write your offer. So that's going to depend on you, the situation, the client, that visitor, how you want to move forward, what your brokerage is willing to take on for risk. If the visitor wants to be represented by the agent, we're going to tell them, you got to sign an agreement with me. We have to. This is going to be state law by January. Is there an exclusive representation with another agent? Then I'm not soliciting you. I'm just disclosing, hey, this is what we can do, but I'm not doing this. So that's the last bit of my presentation, but I did want to share with you a couple of things real quick. If everybody's brains have not imploded, are there any questions before we get to the next bit? I promise it'll be quick and I will send you copies of them. Okay. So let me share this. These came out from CAR on Sunday. I sent them to my clients. I also put them up on my Facebook group if you're looking for them. These are kind of quick little notes about what do we do? What does the listing broker do during this transition period? A lot of random questions are coming up. How do we handle this? If you have a listing agreement with anybody right now that's on the older form that was not released on July 24th, get the DMLA signed. This is letting them know that the cooperating broker is changing, that the MLS is changing, and then this is where we will notify you, seller, as soon as it becomes effective, whichever dates the MLSs make the changes on. You can also let them know, use the BCA. I would have them sign that. And then you could upgrade and change to the current listing agreement, which would bring you into compliance. Find out with your broker of record. It depends on the time frames. Maybe you've got a listing expiring next week. You might want to let it time out and just do the DMLA right now. Maybe you've got a client who's already on the fence. Maybe you've got some stuff that you want to just do a reset. Up to you and your brokerage. But you want to show that you did have this conversation, because while we're in this gray window till August 17th, when NAR will be changing their guidelines for the MLS, you're going to want to make sure that you have documentation that you had these conversations with current listings, as well as moving forward with any of the buyers that you have too. You're going to want to buy a broker agreement on anybody that you're putting in the seat. That's how we're going to be. Okay, is everybody's brains totally melted? It's a lot of information and it's very important stuff. I will make sure that we have a copy of this available. It'll be up on my YouTube and I'll send links. Any questions about these forms or anything else that's going on? I broke a whole room of brains. Okay.
Yeah, I have
Yes,
a question.
Yes.
What's the protocol with regard to relocation, perhaps someone out of the area completely, let's just say a naval personnel coming to San Diego, contacts us in advance saying, these are my priorities. I'm going to be there as of so-and-so date. Can you preview some homes for me? Send me the listings. So when I come to town, I can preview those properties with you. How do we handle that?
BRBC. They have to
Okay.
sign a BRBC with you, and you can specify that you will be doing exactly what you're saying, meeting date to be said date to view in person. You may be sending videos over. You are acting as you're going to need to find out if they want to do exclusive, non-exclusive. But those are actions as of an agent. So even if you're under a non-exclusive, any of those properties, you would have the rights to compensation on.
Because they'd like some information in advance of flying into town to preview. They want me to walk through them, send them, say, this is a match, this is not a match, and then set up appointments. So the BRBC.
Yes, no, you were totally, I would do the BRBC because you are going to be, those are actions of an agent and you were establishing agency.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let's see. There was one, as a TC, do you think the ARC is a good form as well? Which one's the ARC? Remind me what the ARC is. I'm gonna look up what that form is. Obviously I don't use it because I'm not remembering off the top of my head. Let's see. What is that form? Oh, authorization. Thank you for reminding me. Obviously I don't use it. I kind of feel like you're already doing that by establishing the relationships, and you're going to have that in the BRBC on a listing agreement. Before, when we weren't seeing as many BRBCs, I could see where it have value, but at this point, you're creating a contract with whatever client you're working with. So if you're doing that, I don't see the need for the second suspender, but verify with the broker of record that you're working on. I wouldn't I typically am communicating through my agent. My agent has brought me on. And by doing that, am I stepping over the bounds as a TC and creating agency where I'm acting as an agent, which I have to be very careful of. Okay. What's the other one? Here's the other one. So you're going to have to be really careful on that. I think you might be crossing over into an agency space that you may not want to. Double check with the broker of record and call car legal. That one, I think you're opening a can of worms you may not want to deal with. Let's see, Darcy. Okay, everything in writing. If they get seller confirm, I've had some putting in additional terms. So what they said was from car legal about if you have a seller who wants to do a concession and they're adamant, they want to make sure it's in there. Right now, car will not create a form to acknowledge the concessions. What has been instructed is the seller would need to put in writing into a document that can be then included into a modification of terms to your listing agreement stating that they wanted to offer that. You also could use that multiple service, the MLSA. You can mark it on there and then make it a supporting document to that as well. Again, verify with your broker of record how they want to move forward with this. There is big concern about that issue and maybe being steering, antitrust. There's all sorts of stuff about that. So double check how they want to proceed. Like I said, a lot of the big shops are not even going to do that. So there's a reason they're behaving that way. Their names were in these lawsuits. So I'm trying to pay attention to these little things. So, but right now, if you had to do it for documentation purposes, from what I understand from the CAR trainings, were seller puts it in writing, you create a modification of terms to your listing, stating that this documentation and direction has been received. And then before that, a conversation should be had with the agent and broker, if necessary, with the seller, explaining benefits and ramifications and potential exposure for legal issues is what I would do. Let's see. Welcome. Okay, cool. And yeah, I know, Angelina, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. Well, I've kept you guys for almost a full hour, so I really appreciate your time. If there's any other questions, my cell phone is surgically attached, 619-993-7264. I'm going to put this, very welcome. Thanks for being here, Wendy. I'm going to put this up on my YouTube, and I'll have links on my Facebook, and all of my clients and my escrow officers are about to get a link because they don't get a choice. I'm just kind of force feeding them. So Thank you so much and have a great day. I appreciate it and stay compliant out there.